Good morning, Morai Rabotai. Welcome to another Parsha Shiur with the Perush of Zera Shimson from Rabbi Shimson Nachmani, one of the Gedolei Italia of the time of Or HaChaim HaKadosh, who was leading figure in many communities in his time, maybe over 6 different communities. And as we mentioned before, he had a child that tragically passed away, so he really didn't have a Mimale Makom, and he dedicated his life to writing and publishing his Chidushim. And he writes in the preface to his Sefer that he accepts responsibility of adopting everyone that dedicates themselves to learning his Chidushim and to advocate on their behalf for Zera Shel Kayama, for Shiduchim, and for other areas of Hatzlacha in their life. So therefore, this is dedicated for those people who need Zera Shel Kayama, and especially the people who really work hard every week to make this happen, and the Rosh Gadolian families, the Rari families, Baal's families. We have a co-sponsor anonymously today as well. It should be a zchut for them, Be'ezrat Hashem, together with all those who need Yeshua and Nechama in this area. And also I want to dedicate this to Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, that should have Refuah Shelema. Amen. Amen. Okay, so this is the last parasha of Sefer Bereshit, is the parasha of Galut, Yaakov Avinu and his children, now as a nation of Am Yisrael of 70 people, go down to Eretz Mitzrayim. The last 17 years of Yaakov Avinu's life is there. He has a pleasant time living with Yosef, who he thought for 22 years that he was lost and devoured by a wild animal, and now he sees him not only alive and well, but a tremendous tzaddik and in position of leading the greatest empire of the time. He was basically, technically speaking, a king of Mitzrayim, and at the end of his life, he gets the kids together and he gives them brachot, which is tremendous, just very, very much highly suggested that people should go through the Rashi, the just simple Chumash Rashi of the brachot of the Shvatim that Yosef, that Yaakov rather gives them, a very worthwhile study of the brachot, which encapsulates all the essence of every shevet and what they're going to be doing in future until the end of time in their capacity with their potential that they had. The Midrash Rabbah says something extremely strange at its face value, and we'll read it together. This is what Zera Shimson starts the parasha with. Reuben bechori ata, the very first of the Shvatim, Reuben, when Yaakov gives him the brachot, melamed sheba legalot lahem et haketz v'nitkatza mimenu. Says the Midrash, it teaches you that Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal to them the final geula, the ketz, what the Gemara calls Ketz HaYamin, which doesn't mean Yamin versus small. Yamin means Yamim, right? He wanted to tell them the end of days. He wanted to tell them the future of Klal Yisrael, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu covered it from him. It was covered from him. Mashal, the Midrash brings an example, a parable for this, to a king that had a friend. And the friend of the king, he was leaving, or he was dying. And his children were surrounding his bed as he's leaving this world. Let me reveal to you the hidden secrets of the king. I am the close confidant of the king. I'm going to tell you. And all of a sudden, he looks up and he sees the king is there. Amar lahem, and he says to them, instead of revealing the secrets, he says, Havu zehirin bichvodo shel melech. Be very careful with the kavod of the king, with the respect of the king. Kach Avinu Yaakov, just like this parable has it, Yaakov Avinu was the same way. He looks and he sees the Shekhinah is standing above his bed. He tells the children, be very careful with the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Midrash Pli, a very strange midrash. What's this? this parable doing in the Midrash? What's the meaning of all of this? So he's going to ask 4 questions and answer them really in the reverse order from the fourth to the first. So let's read the questions that there are when you set up this Midrash together with its conceptual message. The first one is, what was Yaakov Avinu thinking in the beginning that he wanted to do this, and what caused him to stop? Why would you want to reveal the future? And then, if you wanted to, why was it stopped? That in the beginning, when he sees the Shekhinah, it seems from Zera, from this Midrash, it's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blocked it. He blocked it himself. He saw Shekhinah is there, and he just didn't say it. He said something else. So what was he thinking in the beginning? What did he think at the end? He didn't know that Hashem is standing everywhere. Like, if anybody knows that, it's Yaakov Avinu. So what do you mean? He looked up and he saw Shekhinah and he stopped it. Like, it is hiding from Hashem, Chas v'shalom. It's a very strange midrash. Ve'od, the second question is, Ma tzorech lemashal? Why do you need a parable for this? A friend of a king. And once you have it, what does that mean exactly? That he sees the king, he says, be careful with the kavod of the king. What's the connection between being careful with the kavod of the king and Ratzah legalot haketz, of revealing the final future of Am Yisrael? The third question he brings, ve'od kevan shkvar ra'a Yaakov sheyitzchak ratzah legalot haketz. This, he jumps the gun over here, because there's a different midrash that says that Yitzchak Avinu also wanted to tell the Ketz the future to Esav, and it was covered, and he didn't do it. And the midrash is in Yalkut, in this parasha actually, in Parashat Vayechi, in Yalkut, in Remes Kufnun Zayin, it says on the pasuk in Iyov, Mesir Safa leNeemanim ze Yitzchak veYaakov. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes away, removes the mouth, the lips, the power of speech from Ne'emanim, from people who are trustworthy. Says the Midrash, this is Ne'emanim, 2 people. It's plural form. It's Yitzchak and Yaakov, says the Midrash, shebikshu legalot haketz, that they wanted to reveal the future, and Hashem didn't let it happen. So, what is it? Says the Midrash, Yitzchak Avinu kara le'Esav ubikesh lekalot et haketz. He called Esav when he wanted to give them the brachot. He wanted to reveal the ketz to Yitzchak, uknazo hakadosh baruch hu mimenu. Hashem covered it from Yitzchak Avinu. He was not able to reveal it. Ve'af Yaakov bikesh lekalot haketz, and Yaakov also tried to do it, and we just read what happened, right? So that's the third question. And the final question he asks, Ve'od kashe, ech Yitzchak Avinu ratzah lekalot haketz le'Esav harasha. How in the world would you want to reveal the ketz to Esav, not to Yaakov? Esav was a rasha merusha. And according to this midrash, Yitzchak Avinu knew that Esav was a rasha. Now, I just want to open a parenthesis over here. This is a very highly debated concept of what was exactly Yitzchak Avinu thinking. But one approach that I would suggest is pay attention that Yitzchak Avinu never wanted to actually give the bracha of Avraham, Birkat Avraham, Birkat Horai. He never wanted to give that to Esav. He gives that not to Yaakov Avinu when he deceived him by presenting himself as Esav. He just gives him a bracha of Gashmiut, that he should have a lot of money, a lot of oil, Mishmanei Haaretz Moshavecha, that's for Esav really, right? Right? All of those things. Physical power, physical success, and wealth and riches. But the spiritual bracha he always was keeping for Yaakov. Why? And he gives it to him when he's about to go to Beit Lavan. It's the second time he gives him brachot. So it's clear that Yitzchak Avinu was not a fool. He wanted to give the bracha of Gashmiut to Esav and the Ruchniut to Yaakov because he thought that they're going to be working together. He's going to be the power, the conqueror, right? The ruler, and Yaakov Avinu is going to be Ishtam Yoshev Alim, learning Torah and so on. But unbeknownst to him, Esav was worse than what he thought. He was not just the conqueror for Hashem, but he was doing all kinds of negativity and so on, which is beyond the scope of this talk. But nevertheless, what was he thinking to give the Ketz? If you want to be Megalea Ketz, you should be really revealing that to Yaakov, not to Esav. And that's the final question. Now, so says the Zera Shimson, even when we learn in Masechet Pesachim, this Gemara in Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph in Masechet Pesachim, that discusses the fact that Yaakov wanted to reveal the Ketz, the final redemption and the future of Am Yisrael, Bikesh lekalot ha-Ketz ha-Yamin, lebanav v'nistaleka mimenu Shechina. Shechina of Hashem was removed from him. All of a sudden, he blanked. That's what the Gemara says. Amar, and Yaakov said, wait a second, Chas v'Shalom, Shema yesh psul b'mitati. Maybe I have someone in the 12 children that I have, maybe someone is pasul over here. That's why Hashem did not let me reveal this, and Shekhinah was nistalek, Shekhinah was removed from me. Maybe like Yitzchak, that Esav was there. Maybe like Abraham, that Ishmael was there. Shatza mimenu Ishmael, Shatza mimenu Esav. And the children of Yaakov in return answered, they said, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Our father, hear, O Israel. Right? Shema Yisrael, Yisrael was the name of Yaakov. Right? The pasuk of Shema was first said there. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We all believe in the same. We are homogeneously believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem Echad. There's no pasul. There's no one in your children that is pasul, that is invalidated in his belief and mindset. Right? Keshem shem belibecha echad, kach en belibenu ela echad. Fine. So he adds one aspect to this question. Ma inyan ze lazeh. What's the connection that because Shekhinah was removed from him, it means that he has a psul in his children? Maybe just Hashem doesn't want to let him. Right? Why would you think that Shekhinah was nistalek because one of the children is pasul? Maybe Hashem doesn't want you to reveal the Ketz. And that's as simple as that. So let's try to answer. First of all, there is a Gemara, famous Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadi Zayin Amud Bet. There the Gemara has like a very long arichut in description of what happens time of Mashiach, 5,000 years, like this, like that, 7,000 years, 6,000 years. A lot of very interesting Gemarot pieces there. But the Gemara says, at the end, Kalu Amar Rav. Rav holds, Kalu Kol HaKitzin. Says all of the kitzin, the ends, are finished already. There's no time on calendar that Hashem says, okay, this time I'm going to bring Mashiach. There's no set time. So what does it depend on? Because he holds like Rabbi Eliezer. Rav holds like Rabbi Eliezer. The Amar, that he said, it's machloket Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, as we'll see in just a moment. But Rabbi Eliezer holds, Im Yisrael osin tshuva nigalin, im lav en nigalim. If Jews do tshuva, there will be nigal. If not, no geula. Right? And Shmuel says no. The Shmuel Amar dayo le'aver she'amod be'evlo. Which means, if you take a look at the Mefarshim in the Gemara, it means HaKadosh Baruch Hu is like an avel, chas v'shalom, that he is mourning the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, like the Gemara says in Masechet Brachot Avhei. The Gemara says, Eliyahu Navi tells one of the Amoraim that says, Chayecha, every day, 3 times a day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu cries on Beit HaMikdash, says, Oy lo le'av, woe is to the father that his children are not around his shulchan, and because of the averot, he had to send them off of his palace and his house, right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu mourns on us not being around him. And this, Shmuel, Shitav Shmuel is like Rabbi Yeshua, who disagrees with Rabbi Eliezer, and he holds, the Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu ma'amid lahem melech shegzerotav kashot ke'aman. You know how HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets us to do tshuva? Whereas Rabbi Eliezer and Rav hold that we have to do tshuva ma'ahava. We have to be what we call in the Sifrei Chasidut and Kabbalah, they call it it'aruta deletata. That we have to have the hitorerut from ourselves to do tshuva properly from love of Hashem. Rabbi Yehoshua says, no, you don't need to do that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you don't do it yourself, He's going to bring someone like Haman, right? Or Yahya Simbar, Yimach Shemo v'zichro, Hamas and Hezbollah, and then Machziran lemutav bal korchan. They will be doing tshuva because they see war, they see difficulty, and they will do tshuva. The Maharsha explains this Gemara that the core of the machloket is that Rav holds we need tshuva ma'ava, and Shmuel holds that even a tshuva al korcham, even when you do tshuva because you are pushed and pressed and hurt, still is sufficient for the geula to come. And now he explains the answer to the fourth question. Ma'ata kavanat Yitzchak. You know why Yitzchak was saying this to Esav? He knew that Yitzchak is going to be the conqueror. He's going to be the one ruling over and being the king and so on. And he is telling him, he says, look, the Jews, Yaakov, right, like he said, Kasher tarid, parakta ulo me'alecha, ma'al savarecha. He says, only when they mess up, you have power over them. But according to this, he's telling him, according to Shmuel, that holds like Rabbi Yehoshua, that even if you do tshuva under duress, that Esav says, Esav, you should know, even if you become the king and you bother them, and you make gezerot on them, and they do tshuva, they will overthrow you. Right? So be very careful with them, because you can't win with these people, with Yaakov. Even if you are in the ruling, in the command position, if you make difficult gezerot, they'll still overthrow you and they will be nigal. And why would he want to say this to Esav? Because he had Rahmanut and Yaakov. For him not to make too difficult of gezerot on Jews. Hashem didn't want this to be revealed to Esav, says the Zera Shimson. Why? Because he didn't want him to reveal this sod, this secret to Esav. שאם לא יעשו תשובה מדעתם הקדוש ברוך הוא יאמין להם מלך קשה ומחסרן למוטב בעל כורחם ומתוך כך היו נגאלים. Because if the goyim would know that if they are too difficult, you'll do tshuva and they will be finished, then they will never be too difficult on Jews. And listen to this. You ready for this? Says the Zera Shimson, ולא תהיה עוד חס ושלום תקנה לישראל. We would be assimilated in the goyim if they would be too nice. Hashem wants sometimes to be in a situation of difficulty that we will do tshuva and through that we will stay Am Yisrael. Otherwise, look, according to Pew Research of 2015, we should have had 36 million plus Jews in the United States by 2015. And we only had less than 6 million, or maybe just a border of 6 million. 30 plus million Jews lost to assimilation because of Achi Esav, because of the brotherhood, because they were nice, right? Equal rights, equal this, equal that, right? You know, actually there was this guy that, I mentioned this one more time, that there was the Sudash Lishit, that there was this fellow, full of tattoos all over his body, he had like a skeleton and his thing, he couldn't hide it. And he said, I want to send a message to thank Hamas because I grew up here, my grandfather and grandmother were Holocaust survivors, and we thought that it's never going to happen here, they love us and this. And now I'm seeking my Jewish roots much more, and hundreds of my friends as well, they all became Baalei Tshuva because now we realize that nothing has changed. We are hated regardless of how much, how we look and how we act. We are still identified as Jews, so I may as well just know what Judaism means, right? So that is this, that he said, Hashem wanted Sharei Belav Hachi, Hem einam osim tshuva. They're not going to do tshuva properly, so Hashem did not want. And now you understand, says Zera Shimson, why Yaakov thought that he would be different. Right? Yaakov, even though that he saw what happened to Yitzchak, he still thought that he himself was going to be different. Yitzchak, he understood, he says Yitzchak was going to say this to Goyim, to Esav. But I want to reveal this for the Jews themselves to know to do tshuva. Because when they know this message, that is all dependent on them, they will do tshuva, they will be on top of them. So that's a good thing. He does not explain what this means. He's referring to a pasuk, Beito Achishena. And Beito Achishena means the two aspects of Geula. It's a Beito. Sometimes, if they don't have enough zchuyot, it will be at the end of time. But there's Achishena. I could do an express one, do a quicker one, earlier one, if they do tshuva. So says Yaakov, let me tell them this secret that they know everything depends on their actions and do tshuva. Therefore, when he saw that Shekhinah was taken away from him, he thought maybe there is a problem with my children. Like my father Abraham, like my grandfather Abraham, like my father Yitzchak, and therefore Hashem does not let me reveal it. Like the Gemara says, this in multiple places. The Gemara he refers to, he does not mention it. That someone that is not miyuchas is a person that's pasul. He does not merit to have secrets revealed to him. This is a Gemara in Masachet Kiddushin, Daf Ayin Aleph. The Gemara there is talking actually about Rabbi kicking out someone from the Bet Midrash because it's mishpacha shatkanit. It says if you want to marry into a family that's a mishpacha shatkanit. That when there's fight, they keep quiet. They always they are, because that shows that they are, the fact that they don't go and say, oh, I know about your household and you're like this and you're like that. They have what to say, but they don't say it. They keep the secrets of other people. That's a mishpacha miyucheset, says the Gemara. That's a sign of kashrut. And the Gemara there in Daf Ayin Aleph says, in Eretz Yisrael, that's how people would check for shidduchim. You wanted to marry off a son, you will look into a family that in fights they would always be quiet. They'll let other person say what he says, even though that they have what to say, and they could come back with a good comeback lines that destroys you, and they don't say it. That's a mishpacha miyucheset. So that's what he refers in. He does this all the time. He refers to Gemarot in a one line or in one quick passage. He does not mention that's a Gemara, but he brings another Gemara in Masachet Sanhedrin, also Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. The Gemara there says, Dein Galer Rezayahu, the Rabbi kicked out someone from the Bet Midrash because he was a person that would reveal secrets and therefore that was a pasul person. It was a person that was not kosher. Yeah, but that's a saying that people say. It doesn't have necessarily a source in the literature, but yes, correct. The eretz is important. They said Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad to say that we are kosher. Okay, now let's explain the Midrash. Let's now with all of this go back to the Midrash, and then we got to speak about all the Rishonim that actually gave dates for Mashiach's coming. It's going to be very gishmak. So says the Zera Shimson. Vezehu be'ura midrash sheYaakov haya sover sheleYisrael mutar legalot lahem haketz v'nitkasa mimenu lefi she'en retzono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu bekach. This is the explanation that Yaakov wanted to do this, but then it was covered from him and he couldn't end up doing it because Hashem did not want it to happen. But after the children said, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, the Shekhinah came back to Yaakov Avinu, and he looks and he sees the Shekhinah, but then he hints to something that would be the secret of the Ketz, the secret of the Geula at the end of days. The Kevan Shera, I'm skipping one paragraph here. The Kevan Shera HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he saw the Shekhinah after this, he said, Hevu zehirin b'chvodo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Be careful in the kavod of Hashem. What was he saying? This is fantastic. Listen to this. Ubazer ratzah legalot lahem haketz beremes. He gave a hint of how to act to merit Mashiach. Mishum da'amrinan be'perek kama diyuma. The Gemara says in the first perek of Yuma in Daf Tet The Rishonim shenitgala avonam, there the Gemara discusses the first destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, the second one, and the Gemara says the first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, and after 70 years we came back. And Yirmiyah Navi said after 70 years you got to come back. But the second Beit HaMikdash we're still hanging in Galut basically. And the Gemara already said it. The Gemara says the second Beit HaMikdash as an open-ended Galut. Was not nitkala when they're going to come out. Why? Because the first ones, they had respect for Ribono Shel Olam. Their averot, even though that they did the averot, they were open about it. They were not hiding themselves from Hashem. They did avodah zarah, gilui arayot, shfichut damim, but they had respect for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let me explain this to you in a format of a Gemara in Masechet Baba Kama Daf Ayin Tet. The Gemara says, if I would ask you, a ganav and a gazlan, which one is a bigger avera? Ganav is someone that goes to someone's house when they're sleeping, they're not home, they break in, they steal something, and they go. They run away. Gazlan is someone that holds up someone in the middle of the day with a gun and steals and robs them. Right? Which one is a bigger avera? You would say gazlan. You held the guy up in the daylight and you robbed him, right? That's how you would say. But some people have done the Gemara already, or they're very smart, right? And they say ganav. Why? The Gemara says ganav is a bigger avera because the gazlan is hishva kevod HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He equated the kavod of Hashem with the kavod of the people. He's stealing openly. I'm not hiding myself. But the ganav, right, is disrespecting Hashem by the means of like hiding. Well, Hashem doesn't see you, right? So in the same spirit, you could say the Bayit Sheni, the avon of the Bayit Sheni was what? The structure of Bayit Sheni was sinat chinam, because they hated each other in their hearts. Right? And the outside they would smile, say Hazaku Baruch, I love you, and in their heart would say Shemu Zichro. Right? There would be, right? That's how it was. The hatred that brewed inside, beneath the surface, that was the problem. And says the Zera Shimson, that's what Yaakov was telling them. He said, respect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And be open about those things. You know, by the way, this is a Gemara. He does not bring this, but I'll just add to it. It's something very meaningful. The Gemara says in Masechet Brachot, Daf Kafchet Amud Bet, that when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was on his deathbed, his Talmidim, he was the Nasi Israel. Like what the Gemara doesn't say about him, if you study the Gemara there and also in Sukkot Daf Kafchet, tremendous things about Rabbi Yochanan, mind-blowing things. How amazing he was. And they wanted the last word from the Rabbi. After a lifetime of being students, say, Rabbeinu Barechenu, give us a bracha. Right? And they were waiting for a Rebbesh, a bracha, like Baba Sali and Baba this and Baba that. And he said the most simple things to them. He said, Yehi ratzon, she'eh mora shamayim alechem ke mora basar v'dam. I give you bracha that you should be afraid of Hashem just like you're afraid of people. They said, that's it? Atkan, that's it? He said, you think this is nothing? Halvai! Halvai! This is a tremendous bracha, because when you want to do an avera, what do? People used to, in previous generations, they look like right now, they look at the cameras. Like, they want to make sure there's no cameras, that no one sees. You do it. But how Hashem? If you're afraid of Hashem the same exact way, you will never do avera. So that's the kavod of Hashem. Yaakov Avinu tells them, be careful in the kavod of Hashem, because if you respect HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you'll be respecting each other. You won't get into this whole sinat chinam thing and other things. Right? If you respect the father, you respect the children. That's a tremendous thing. And so that's the secret of the final Geula. Based on that Gemara in Yuma Daf Tet. It's such a genius insight that he brings over here. Unbelievable. And we learn from here. And we're finishing up over here. You know why the final geula was covered from Yaakov Avinu. When people don't know when it's going to come, it could be any moment. כמו שנתגלה להם בשאר גלויות מצרים ובבל, ישימו על ליבם, they will put on their heart, שהסיבה היא שנאת חינם. It depends on us. If we stop hating each other, if we start doing teshuvah, it's all dependent on us. ויתקנו את עצמם, they will fix themselves, ויש אותם, and there's another reason in the מפרשים, שאם היה קץ גלוי, you know what would have happened if we would have it on the calendar? You know when Mashiach is going to come? In 350 years. Or whatever, it can't be really now because you have only 200 some years left. But right, if you would know that's not going to be you know what you would say? When you get close to it, you say, Hashem is going to bring Mashiach anyways, and just let me have fun, right? They're not going to want to do teshuvah properly to own Mashiach, right? And there are other Rishonim who say the reason is because if you know that's going to be in a while, you give up. So I want to find time just for 5 minutes maybe to explain a concept that's there. The Gemara says this in the same Gemara in Tafsadi Zayin Amud Bet Masechet Sanhedrin. The Gemara says, Amar Shmuel Bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonatan, right? Tipach Atzman or Ruchan or Atzmotan, different girsaot. Tipach Ruchan shel Mechashve Kisin. It's a curse, a klala, to anyone that tries to calculate when the time of Mashiach is going to be. Now, how would you calculate it anyways? Because there are two psukim, two real nevuot in Sefer Daniel, in Perek Zayin and Perek Yud Bet, that talk about the coming of Mashiach, and he actually gives a time, right? The year 1204, 13 something, right? 1000, which if you make a calculation so based on where you start, you'll have a year for when Mashiach is going to come, right? And even though that the pasuk there says, Daniel asked the malach, says, I'm not understanding this. What does this mean? He said, I don't get it. Even though that the Navi understands the nevuah clearly, he says, I don't understand the meaning of it. And the malach tells him, yeah, correct, because Hashem doesn't want it to be at et ketz. Hashem does not want this to be revealed, right? Which brings us to a very fascinating question. Why anyone would actually sit after this Gemara that gives a curse? Why would anyone sit and calculate when Mashiach is going to come? Would you do that? Right? But you know who did it? Rab Sadia Gaon. Rab Sadia Gaon did it. Rabbeinu Hananel did it. Right? The Ramban did it. Ramban writes this in his Vikuach, at the end of his Vikuach with Pablo Cristiani, that he had a debate with this Jewish student of his that became Christian, and well, it was a fascinating story behind it. He gives a year, says, I'm going to disappoint the people, but because not most of you are not going to see it necessarily, but he gives a year. The Malbim gave a year. The Rambam writes a year. Rambam himself, even though the Rambam writes in Hakdama to his Perush Mishnayot on the 11th chapter of Masechet Sanhedrin Perek Chelek, he writes that it's asur to do this. He writes it in Hichot Melachim in Yad HaChazaka in Perek Yud Bet Halacha Bet also. It's asur to do this by himself in Igeret Teman. He does it. He gives a year. He brings this is a question that for intellectual honesty. He brings Rab Sadia Gaon. He says, I don't understand. How in the world did Rab Sadia Gaon give a year? Tipach Ruchan brings this Gemara inside design. Says Tipach Ruchan is a klala, a curse in the Gemara. He says must be because Rab Sadia Gaon, most of his generation were Karaites, and people were giving up on ever being nigal. There was depression in his time. He must have wanted to elevate the spirit of people and so on and so forth. Maybe that's why he gave it, right?
Gave an actual year?
Yeah. Yeah. Malbim gave a year. I don't want to go through all of the things. Should be Nashamayim.
But if you say you can't even tell us the year right now because then that.
No. I could tell you all these, but there are 15 of them that I could count at least 15. That each Mishnah Berurah gives a date. Chafetz Chaim in Halacha Berurah in Chelek Daled of Mishnah Berurah in Berurah Halacha gives a year also that passed about a bunch of years ago. No, so it's tremendous, right? It's tremendous. The Malbim actually asks this. Malbim says, it says ad et ketz. So when it's mamash close up, you could say it for people to do tshuva. That's why he held. But there's a lot to be talked about this. And Chazal say Mashiach comes from Hesach Hadat. Why is it asur to make a calculation? The thing is very simple. Rambam himself writes, and I end with this. Rambam himself writes in his 13 principles of faith that he counts in Perek Chelek, the 11th Perek of Masechah Sanhedrin Jerush Mishnayot. He says the mitzvah is, and he says this in Yad HaChazakah as well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, belief in Mashiach is one of the principles of faith, and writes Rambam, V'kol mi she'eno ma'amin bo, o eno mehake biyato. If you don't believe in Mashiach, or you're not awaiting his coming, that means you believe in him, but you're not necessarily waiting for him. So he'll come when he'll come. Right? He'll come. I'll believe in him. But he'll come when he'll come. If you do that, says Rambam, you are kofir, you're a denier of the entirety of Torah. What are you denying? I'm not denying Mashiach is going to come. So when he's going to come? Must be that if you don't realize that our life without HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence of Shekhinah, the way we had him in the Beit HaMikdash, of Jews living with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, literally, if you don't believe that that's something that we are missing so badly, you don't really believe in Mashiach. Because imagine to yourself a person that they found lumps in their breast, in their chest, in their body, Chas v'shalom, Rachmana litzlan, and you don't know if this is benign or if it's cancerous, and you went for the testing, and they're going to give you the answer within now and 3 days from now. How many times do you check that email? You're going to be checking it hundreds of times every day. You're waiting for it because your life depends on it. If you believe that our life depends on our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that connection comes back only with the coming back of the Shekhinah and Mashiach and Beit HaMikdash and so on, then you will be waiting for it. You will be awaiting it like nothing else. Will be on your mind 24/7. And that's the measure, that's the barometer of waiting for, of believing in Mashiach. That's why there's no time giving. Tipach rucham shel mikashvei kitzin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu covered it from Yaakov Avinu, because he wants us to be one, to put the hatred away, like he said. And maybe I could tie in also, I forgot to say it, that's the answer that they gave him. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We're all one together. We love each other and we love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And only in that way, when you're awaiting the coming of Mashiach, when you realize that we are incomplete in the Galut, that the Hamas and the Hezbollah and the wars and the deaths and the terrorism and all those things are just an outcome of us not having the Shekhinah. None of these would be there if we had the Shekhinah. It's a manifestation of us lacking that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you yearn for that. That's the purpose of Galut. Hashem has put that there for us to do tshuva, to want to get closer to Him. And that's why there's no calculating of the ketz, because it could be every moment. Hayom im bekoli tishvau, says the pasuk. Today it will be, if you will just listen to me. And that's such a powerful, beautiful message of Parashat Vayechi, Be'ezrat Hashem, as we finish the Sefer of creation, with the creation of our nation being the last part of it, the creation of Am Yisrael in Mitzrayim. We should realize that our Am, En umatenu umala betorotea, our nationhood is dependent directly on our relationship with Torah, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Be'ezrat Hashem, through that we should experience a Geulah Shelema with coming of Mashiach, B'merabi Amenu, Amen.